Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you all for your attendance. My name is Chris Youles, and I'm joined by my colleague Chris Matthews. We're from Amazon Web Services. We're from the Global Education team, both based out of London, and delighted to be here with you here today. My previous history was working in higher education in the UK. I was Chief Information Officer at the University of Bath, down in the southwest of England, and prior to that I was Chief Information Officer at the Open University, also in the UK. Open University has got 200,000 online students, one of the biggest universities in Europe, all of them connecting into the university digitally. I've been with Amazon Web Services for about 6 months now, and I say my focus is on global higher education, so not just focused within the UK, but focused around the globe. I was going to talk a little bit about AWS's involvement in education, and both Chris and I come from backgrounds that are kind of deeply immersed in higher education, and I think it reflects Amazon Web Services' focus on the HE market across the globe. Mission statement that AWS has, again, just amplifying and resonating that real focus around all things higher education. We don't just focus within higher education, we focus across K-12, primary, secondary education. We have a real significant focus across research, whether that's research-intensive universities or research generally across universities, or whether it's dedicated research institutes. And we also have a significant involvement and input with edtechs, those technology companies that are specifically serving the education market. Just looking at a couple of numbers from Amazon Web Services. Amazon, big company. We're part of the e-commerce big Amazon company that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. From an AWS specific and from an education specific point of view, we have over 1,000 customers just in EMEA. So that's higher ed institutions, in particular K-12 institutions, etc. 93% of edtech customers, so these education technology customers, run their services within Amazon Web Services. So you may use a service that isn't branded specifically as AWS, but they are running their services within the AWS cloud. And we have a considerable number of dedicated support resources across, again, the globe and specifically across EMEA. I want to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing across the higher ed market, and understandably artificial intelligence, the previous presentation touching very much on that AI space, and my colleague Chris touching on that in a few moments' time as well. Unsurprisingly, AI dominating that HE market space at the moment. Another statistic for you, 92% of higher education organisations plan to use AI-powered solutions by 2028. So a real focus on AI from universities across the globe. But we know that higher education globally is facing challenges. Aside from the financial challenges and some of the geopolitical challenges that are currently dominating around the globe at the moment, there are other challenges for universities. Technology and data, many universities find themselves in a position, and again, going back to that kind of previous presentation about the importance and the relevance of data, they find themselves using outdated systems that don't integrate very well. It's very difficult to get data to pass between those different systems and then drag that data out of the systems and use it for data and insight purposes, for AI, for machine learning, whatever it happens to be. We know that the way that students consume pedagogy, content, the curriculum, the way that students consume it is changing and changing dramatically. Most students want to, read it, they want to consume it from their device, whether it's a mobile phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a PC. Gone are the days very much so of kind of sitting down with a conventional book and going into a classroom and studying in that kind of very conventional way. And again, universities have got to catch up with that and understand how students want to learn, how they want to consume curriculum and content. The culture in universities often doesn't lend itself to rapid digital transformation. It's often very difficult for universities to get the speed, the pace that is necessary to transform from how they are teaching today, how they taught in the past, to how they need to teach tomorrow. And that can be a real challenge for institutions. Student expectations are changing. Students go on Facebook, they go across all of social media, they use Amazon.com, they're familiar with the fluency, the ease of use of those websites, of that content, and they want their student experience, their study experience to be the same, whether it's consuming that content, that pedagogy, or whether it's trying to navigate to some critical system that they need to log on to or register with or grab information from. In addition, universities are finding a challenge from students where students actually want to study in a different way. Whilst the 3-4 year undergrad degree course is very much still king, it's changing. Students are demanding micro-credentials, a breakdown of perhaps those traditional undergrad degree courses into bite-sized, sometimes credit-bearing courses that they can bolt together to create a new look and feel degree course ultimately. And finally, as I say, those financial challenges that are being faced in different parts of the world, whether it's inflationary, whether it's student numbers diminishing, whether it's demographics of students, those financial challenges are being felt around the globe for different reasons. In addition, the geopolitical impacts, whether it's wars going on in Ukraine or different political parties in different countries, starting to bring to bear on where international students go and study, why they go and study there, and what they can expect when they get there. We're finding that AI is starting to seep through into all areas of higher education. It's starting to provide some input, it's starting to help institutions, but it's providing challenge as well. And we see AI coming into all of these different areas that exist within a traditional, conventional university. We know that AI is feeding into new experiences. We talked about whether it's micro-credentials, whether it's the way that students are consuming that content. AI is starting to feed in to help develop content, etc. Productivity is starting to improve. We're seeing AI bringing new levels of automation and input into administration systems that institutions are using. And unsurprisingly, it's helping to provide key insights and bring creativity to the way that institutions are working. The student journey starts when a student kind of goes onto Google or whatever and decides what university they want to go to where in the world. And it starts off in that kind of marketing and recruitment. And a lot of institutions across the world put a lot of time and effort into how they market to students. Sometimes they know which international markets they want to go after, and they will appeal to students specifically within that particular geography to attract them to their particular university, potentially somewhere else in the globe. Sometimes they do that with good data and good insight, sometimes they don't. We are finding more and more that institutions are demanding good data, are improving their systems to get that data and apply the appropriate AI to it. As we go round that particular path, the other one that I just want to pick out is around personalisation. Students, again, are demanding a personalised experience. Gone are the days where we grouped lots of students together and gave them the same information, the same communication. They want to know how they're doing. They want to know what courses are relevant to them. They want the information that's relevant to them that will help them succeed. And again, we are finding that AI, machine learning, running in the background can help with those experiences. Specifically within AWS, we've developed AI to help in the production of content, the production of curriculum. And this is a challenge for universities because academics write content, they write curriculum, it takes time, effort, energy. Sometimes it can be inconsistent. Sometimes the content itself, once it's been produced, isn't particular media rich. It isn't enjoyable, perhaps, to read in some cases. And using this tool that we've developed within AWS, AI for Teaching and Learning, we can help that process. We can bring consistency. We can help to drive a better outcome for students. Similarly, in campus management, so students go off to university, and the machine that is the university kind of kicks into life. And in many examples, universities are kind of small towns. They've got a laundrette, they've got numerous cafes, they've got shops, they've got a library, they've got accommodation, they've got teaching, they've got research. That all takes management, it takes administration, and it needs looking after in order to make the student experience as good as it possibly can be. And again, we're seeing AI being developed into some of those back-end systems, those campus systems, to help universities give that best possible experience. I touched briefly on research at the start of this. Research is a big area where AWS is helping, whether it's in research data management, the data that comes out from research projects, or whether it's in high-performance computing that help researchers to compute, store, and bring maximum possible output to research opportunities. And again, a big area that AWS are investing in. It's a slide, I think, very similar, in fact, that we saw on the previous presentation, that kind of, data is that differentiator. It doesn't matter what part of a higher ed institution you are working. If you haven't got access to the right data, if you can't get access to consistent data, it's a real challenge. And on that point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Chris Matthews, who's just going to talk a little bit more about generative AI specifically to AWS. Talk close into that.
All right, sounds good. All right, good afternoon. Chris Matthews. My background is in banking, corporate development, and I've been the chief revenue officer for a number of large listed companies like Warner Brothers, Scholastic Media, 3P. And my role at AWS is got a global AI strategy lead. So I'm going to consolidate down a multi-day workshop into essentially 3 or 4 slides. So there's probably a lot I'm not going to cover, but hopefully we'll kind of start to scratch the surface, and would love to follow up. Oh, sure. I have a tendency to talk very lowly sometimes. Anyhow, so obviously we're moving at a fast pace, right? Models are coming out weekly, bi-weekly. New models, but also iterations on the existing models that we see in the marketplace, right? But generally, this is the kind of progression that we've seen over the last few years, right? Not every enterprise organization kind of fits this, but in 2023, we sort of named it as kind of the year of proof of concepts, right? So what we were hearing is from a lot of organizations, frankly, was what is generative AI? We were getting really basic questions about, is this secure? What models are out there? How do we choose them? And our focus was get in, explore, get your feet wet, get your hands wet, right? We don't want to be on the sidelines because the industry in the space is moving incredibly fast. Last year, we titled it kind of the year of production. What we were seeing across industries, again, not just in education, but was organizations thinking about prioritization of use cases, right? What customer problems were they solving for? As Chris shared, our focus is very much about keeping students in education, but also just keeping customers at the center and improving the experience for them across industries and across sectors. But cost was coming up, security, compliance. Those were the typical questions we were seeing in 2024. Now, fast forward into obviously 2025, and where we're seeing those conversations and questions start to shift across organizations and across into education is business value, right? How do you keep up? What's the latest? What's the greatest models? How do we choose those? But also, how do we continue to focus on security, privacy, compliance, and then obviously, new features and functionality like agents, like knowledge bases, right? What are they? How do we use them? How do we deploy them? And so those are some of the. Fast forward into So generally at AWS, I'm sure a lot of you have used ChatGPT, right? Probably have it on your phones. Maybe some of you are using Gemini. We are very much focused on how do we support enterprise organizations like higher education institutions and other organizations in different industries. But we have 3 different stacks of our generative AI solutions. This bottom layer here in terms of infrastructure to build and train models, that's where we have some organizations, even central governments, building their own large language models. So we provide that infrastructure, chips such as Trainium and Inferentia, to help organizations who want to build their own foundational and large language models. In the middle section here, with Amazon Bedrock, and I'll show another slide here that goes a little bit deeper into this is the layer where we provide access to a number of different models that are available to organizations and enterprises who want to build AI applications and provide access to models and different tools to build their own generative AI apps. And the top layer is access to generative AI applications that are already pre-built that can be customized based on your organization, again, to sort of improve things like boost productivity and efficiency. So there are 5 different components, and I'll go through these really quickly, but that we kind of focus on because we want to provide everything for organizations to scale, to build, deploy their generative AI applications. So as I mentioned earlier, we don't believe any one model is going to win out. We're still early, right? So we want to be able to allow organizations to choose the best model that suits their use cases, that suits their industries and their customers and the problems they're trying to solve for. We want to be able to ensure that organizations are able to optimize, because cost is continuously important to higher education institutions as well as other organizations. Security, right? Data is ultimately important. The privacy of the data, the security of the data. Obviously, I think the previous conversation talked about individual student data, how you're giving access to your data, not just to your higher education institutions, but all the other companies that you work with, right? Being able to ensure the security of your personalized data is ultimately important. That's one of the things we focus on. Building apps safely and responsibly, and being able to provide various tools around responsible AI is incredibly important for us too. And then building and orchestrating agents. So, as I mentioned, our focus is being able to provide the broadest selection of models that are available from leading AI companies, both 1P. So we have, what I mean by that is the various models that Amazon has built, and Amazon Nova, which is part of our broad selection. But I'm sure a lot of you have heard of these, like Cohere, DeepSeek, Stability AI, Anthropic, of course. So our sort of focus is ensuring selection, being able to identify and choose the best models based on the use case for higher education institutions as well as organizations. So when you work on Bedrock, when you want to build on Bedrock, you have the opportunity, again, to choose and test models and have that flexibility to move from one model to the next, and we think that's incredibly important. So built on top of AWS, right? So again, as I mentioned, security and compliance are incredibly important. Data, customer data is never shared with foundational model providers, right? So our focus, again, is in allowing us to ensure the enterprises, the higher education institutions who have your data, is to ensure that your data is secure, it's private. That data transit is incredibly important too, in terms of the encryption of the data. But again, the compliancy is an incredibly important piece, whether it's healthcare with HIPAA or GDPR. So yeah, look, I mean, I think, as I mentioned, responsible AI, we're still early, right? We want you to test, we want you to explore, we want you to iterate. but being able to leverage generative AI, do it responsibly. And so we have various pillars of our responsible AI focus. I've kind of talked about privacy and security a lot, but fairness, transparency, limiting hallucinations, training and education, and that inclusion piece. So all of these, we provide various services and tools really at an enterprise organizational level to ensure that you're leveraging and deploying AI responsibly. Right, so for us, there are 3 stages of how to get started. Selecting the right use case is incredibly important, so that's what we talk to institutions around the world, is to hone in on what problems are you solving for, what are your customers asking. One of the things we know about customers, students, is you continuously want the experience to be better, to be more interactive, to be more personalized, as Chris mentioned. So honing in on that right use case is important. And then empowering teams to innovate with tools and training. So we provide a number of solutions to upskill, reskill your tech, both your tech staff as well as your non-tech staff. We want to ensure, when I meet with organizations around the world, it's not just about the tech team, not just about the product team, it's about sales, it's about marketing, it's about customer success. Bringing all of those people together to focus on what's the voice of customer, what are you trying to solve for, how are you trying to improve the experience of your customers and your students, and then getting started. So this is kind of the matrix model that we use when we do workshops with higher ed institutions and organizations around the world to really dive deep and assess the generative AI use cases, the ones they want to focus on in that matrix of feasibility versus business impact. I won't go through these, but we dive deep on looking at the associated risks around compliance, privacy, and security, data, that differentiator, as Chris mentioned, and the previous talk. Budget obviously is important. ROI, what's the potential benefit and impact to your customers? Is it new revenue? Is it just better personalized experiences? And of course, feasibility. The technology is still new. So in some cases, if you look at content generation, we're still really early in on being able to create high quality, differentiated video, for instance, to drive hyper-personalization and education. And so the feasibility there is probably still a couple of years away to being able to do short form and long form content, for instance, with generative AI. So I won't go through this too much, but we provide, like I said, a number of different trainings and support, not just at the enterprise level, but for students to be able to dive deep, to build skills around generative AI. And then getting started, I think for us, it's about working backwards from your customers. It's about doing those deep dives around data strategy, right? A lot of times organizations, higher education institutions come to us and say, we want to use AI, we want to leverage the tools and functionality, but we start with that, again, that use case and working backwards from customers, but we need to dive deep on the data. Again, talking about, I think the earlier presenter was about structured, unstructured, the quality, where does your data live? Is it interoperable? Is it in legacy systems? And then we run a series of experience-based accelerators to dive deep on AI, connect the dots. I think that's it for us.